700 inmates sentenced to life. Between them, they've killed almost 4,000 people.
A world of terror beyond justice exists in jails all around the world. Cartel bosses are stripped of power and hope. Even gang moguls like El Chapo feel trapped.
I don't know what hell is, but I do know that the assumption would be for a free person, would be pretty close to it.
Welcome to the toughest prisons in the world, where death feels like a sweet escape. From a prison where inmates' balls are electrocuted to the ones where inmates are left to freeze to death, these are the prisons for cartel members that are worse than death. ADX Supermax. Criminals like El Chapo are held in maximum prisons, but maybe not all of them. Some can still be found in medium security prisons. In El Chapo's case, he is held in Supermax prison, known to house extremely dangerous criminals and those who have made a series of escape attempts in other prisons. This is because El Chapo has tried to escape the tight grip of law multiple times, and now he is being held in the ADX Florence, an inescapable prison.
How difficult would it be for him to even try to escape?
Well, no one has so far since 1994 when they opened. But in El Chapo type of confinement at the Supermax, he will be in his cell about 23 hours a day.
You see, the ADX, also known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, has gained a reputation for being inescapable and harsh since its opening in 1994. The ADX is considered so secure that it earned a spot on the Guinness World Record as one of the most secure prisons in the world. It was specifically created for hardened criminals who have proven too dangerous to be housed in an average prison system.
Some of the more infamous inmates of the ADX have been the Oklahoma City bombers, Terry Nichols, who was the mastermind, and Timothy McVeigh, who was ultimately executed.
The Unabomber, the shoe bomber, the underwear bomber.
These hardened criminals are put in harsh conditions, which are believed to make inmates mentally unstable after their term.
I got borderline personality disorder, schizoaffective disorder, a cyclical mood disorder, bipolar, antisocial personality disorder.
This is courtesy of the designs and structure of the prison and monitoring systems located inside and along the outside perimeter of the prison grounds to the steel doors, solitary confinement, and inner designs of the prison that makes it difficult for anyone outside the prison to navigate the inside. And if you think that won't stop anyone from escaping, there are massive guard towers, security cameras, attack dogs, laser technology, remote-controlled door systems, and pressure pads inside a 12-foot-high razor fence that surrounds the prison grounds. Prisoners spend at least 20 hours and sometimes up to 24 hours in their cells without being afforded the chance to communicate with any other inmate. Every cell in ADX has solid steel doors with a small slot and also an interior barred wall with a sliding door. These structures, together with the exterior door, form a sally port, which is used to deter or delay unwanted entry or exit in each cell. These cells are furnished with a modular concrete bed, desk, and stool, while the sink and toilet are made of steel, including a shower with an automatic shut-off valve. The mattresses are very thin, and they are placed over the concrete bed with one blanket each. These are done to ensure that inmates cannot make weapons out of anything in their cells. Every cell has one window, which is approximately 42 inches tall and 4 inches wide. This allows some natural light into the cells and ensures inmates cannot see anything outside of their cells other than the sky and the facility building. Many of the cells have one radio and television, where the inmates who exhibit good behavior can choose to listen to either educational programs or recreational programs. There are different units in the building, housing inmates according to their crimes. However, the most guarded is a unit known as Range 13, holding criminals like El Chapo who have tried to escape in the past. Apart from the prison staff that inmates in Range 13 have access to, they do not see any other humans as they are isolated from other inmates even during recreation. This treatment explains why some ADX inmates have described how hard it is to not be aggressive after being incarcerated in ADX Supermax. If ADX Supermax makes anyone that aggressive, then Black Dolphin would make anyone go even crazier.
It just made me angry, real angry, that I was locked down like that and isolated like that.
Black Dolphin.
Black Dolphin, Russia's highest security prison. It is here that some of the country's worst maniacs, serial killers, terrorists, and even cannibals are held in this cell.
Although Russian prisons are known to be tough, some are even harder than the rest, and one of them is the Black Dolphin. This high-security prison is located on the Kazakhstan border and holds the most brutal criminals in Russia. These criminals include serial killers, cannibals, and terrorists, who are given treatments that are worse than death. No matter what you are thinking about right now, it's much worse. Reportedly, the inmates' testicles are electrocuted by the prison guards, and according to the prison lieutenant, the only way out of this prison is death. But committing suicide is not even an easy task. Black Dolphin has trained guards who watch these prisoners around the clock, which means there's no privacy to do anything secretly. And in as much as they can't commit suicide, they have to suffer grisly torture, which often leaves them bursting their veins and legs. As punishment for going against the laws and orders of a prison guard, when they are not beaten or electrocuted, they are locked up and forced to hold a swallow yoga position, where they have to lay on their stomach, lift their arms behind the back, and raise their legs. Inmates are also not even allowed to walk around upright like humans. This technique is believed to be a tactic for maximum control, depriving the inmate of a view of their immediate surroundings and preventing them from planning an escape. The authorities must definitely hold a great level of hatred for these prisoners, as they have a countermeasure against any guards having sympathy towards them. Each prisoner's crimes and details are pasted on the doors of their cells to remind the guards of who they should have sympathy for.
To that end, every cell door has a description of the inmate's crimes. Any sympathy the guards might feel disappears immediately.
And it's not the prisoners. The 700 prisoners here have killed about 3,500 people altogether, making it an average of 5 murders per inmate. They are confined to their cells every day until they die. Until now, not a single prisoner has ever managed to escape the Black Dolphin prison. The guards in the prison make rounds every 15 minutes, and even every morning. The first thing the guards do is a round check of the cells and the inmates. While Black Dolphin has harsh conditions, imagine being in a prison where your cell walls risk flooding and killing you every day, with no escape. And that's not all that's dangerous about Rikers Island. Rikers Island Inmates have sleeping conditions where they're packed with a mix of criminals, some with lesser crimes and some with murder charges. Any cartel member who finds himself in a place like this would definitely pray for death, as the living conditions here are even worse than anything he's experienced. A series of graphic images of the harsh conditions of Rikers Island made it to the internet, and all we can say to you is they are terrible and disgusting. One of these images shows a person in custody defecating in his shorts due to the absence of a toilet and sitting in his feces. According to the report, the man stayed in these soiled clothes for 11 hours before he was given another pair of pants, not by the guards, but by another person in custody. Nobody cares for these inmates even when they fall sick, as other images show inmates trying to get help for another sick and unresponsive inmate with no prison officer in sight. As you can see in this image, other inmates are also trying to get another inmate downstairs and through hallways in the jail complex to get them help. According to a report, there were videos in which prisoners administered Narcan to a person who was apparently overdosing on opioids. The neglect and mismanagement in this prison of about 6,000 inmates is one of the biggest reasons anyone would not want to go there. The craziest fact about this prison is that a lot of inmates die yearly, recording about 10 to 16 deaths to either suicide or overdose, and also prison fights. Back in 2018, a fight ensued as an inmate attacked a security guard unprovoked. Also, in the same year, another inmate attacked a guard in a confrontation that escalated quickly, only to be stopped by chemical spray. These videos show how violent Rikers Island can be, and even though there's been a call for action from the authorities over the years, the conditions deteriorated further during the COVID-19 pandemic as thousands of correction officers stopped going to work and hundreds of inmates protested against conditions. In addition to the regular violence in Rikers Island, there have been reports of brutal beatings, the seawall assault of female officers, and a growing opioid crisis. Sometimes the guards abuse the inmates, and sometimes the inmates abuse the guards. Reportedly, when the officers eventually subdue any crisis, inmates are put in a decontamination shower stall, intended to be used to wash off chemical spray used to break up fights between prisoners. These shower stalls are reportedly used for solitary confinement. Allegedly, the inmate pictured in this stall was never sprayed with chemicals, but was held in the stall for nearly 24 hours. Soon, the inmate tried to harm himself and was later photographed being transported on a gurney. What makes the case of Rikers Island really disturbing is the fact that back in 2021, this prison allegedly spent close to $600,000 in a year. Still, the conditions of Rikers Island say otherwise, with images of the building showing extensive decay and dilapidation of the facilities, including broken floors, ceilings, and fire-singed doors. Before you commit a crime in New York City, you may want to remember the harsh conditions in Rikers Island. And speaking of harsh conditions, the previous prisons are nothing compared to the next prison, the Polar Wolf. Polar Wolf. Let's just stick to calling this prison Polar Wolf, unless you want us to spend time trying to figure out how to say FKU IK3 of the Federal Penitentiary Service of Russia for the Yamalo-Nenets Autonomous Okrug or Yamskaya Troika. Now, Polar Wolf is a men's maximum security corrective colony located in the town of Karp, but its reputation is even more complicated than its original name sounds. While almost everyone knows that Russia has the craziest prisons, the Polar Wolf has a dismal reputation that became widespread after the death of Alexei Navalny. If you didn't see the news, Navalny was a Russian opposition leader who was always speaking out against Vladimir Putin. He had been battling several legal cases since 2013, before he got poisoned in 2020. After he recovered, he accused Vladimir Putin of poisoning him. And not long after he got out of the hospital, he was slammed with a 2.5-year prison sentence and later given an additional 9 years after being found guilty of embezzlement and contempt of court. He appealed, but got rejected and was transferred to a high-security prison. The following year, he received another sentence of 19 years on extremism charges. Soon, Navalny went missing from prison for almost 3 weeks, and by the time he was found, he was in the Polar Wolf prison. His fans immediately began to speak against his transfer, as they knew that Polar Wolf was worse than death. This prison has always functioned as a prison colony for especially dangerous repeat offenders. Conditions for prisoners are very harsh.
Your feet all day from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and never allowed to sit down.
According to reports, every time you go to the authorities with a medical request, you're given a pill for diarrhea. It doesn't matter if you have a headache, all you get is a diarrhea pill. The cells don't look really good, but you can say it's better than some of the cells you have seen on this list. But these cells would have been havens if they had normal temperatures. Reportedly, there are no radiators to heat the cells. There are 2 pipes through which water flows in and out, and as punishment for standing up to a guard, they turn the valve, and your room temperature drops to 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Imagine sitting in a room that cold wearing thin clothes. Of course, when there are inspections, the temperature might go up to 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. But as soon as the outsiders leave, the temperature can be turned back down to 16 to 18 degrees Celsius. Usually, temperatures in Carp fall below -30 degrees Celsius in the long, cold months that make up most of the year. And summer is not a respite, because it gets searingly hot, which attracts mosquitoes and lice. But the cold is a weapon of torture for the security guards. A former inmate who spoke about various kinds of cold torture gave testimony saying inmates were forced to stand outside for up to 40 minutes in -40 degrees Celsius, wearing minimal clothing. If one person moved while standing, the whole group was doused with water as punishment. These punishments were also given to Navalny, who was also reportedly kept in solitary confinement for about 27 days. On February 16, 2024, the prison reported the death of Alexei Navalny. He was said to have lost consciousness after a walk and taken in for resuscitation, which didn't yield positive results. There are more prisons whose conditions are even worse. But before we go on, let's discuss our subscriber's pick. This image depicts the rumored case of a particular prison whose name is unknown. This prison has the most brutal punishment for cartel members who find their way in. Allegedly, it is not registered under the government, but run by cartel members themselves. When cartel members are caught snitching or not following the rules, they are taken to this prison, where they are tortured and have their private parts removed. This story sounds unbelievable, but isn't it similar to Black Dolphin, that electrocutes the testicles of its inmates? Let us know what you think in the comments section. La Mesa. Imagine a prison that was built to accommodate 1,500 inmates, but holds 7,000 inmates instead. This is the reality in La Mesa prison in Tijuana, Mexico. Per calculation, this means that a cell designed for 2 holds as many as 8, while the one designed for 4 holds 24. Bunk beds to the ceiling and mats covering the floor make it impossible to move without everyone else repositioning themselves first. Inmates also spoke about how the authorities don't care about their well-being and just leave them to cater for themselves. To survive in this condition, the inmates, ranging from petty thieves to hardened cartel killers, need to be cooperative, but cooperation here is almost impossible. This riot left inmates dead and a lot of prisoners and officials injured. According to a report, one inmate was beaten to death by other prisoners and his body was set on fire. Other inmates who died were said to be shot by either the police or inmates. About 60% of La Mesa prison was burned in the melee, according to firefighters. Columns of smoke rose from the prison as inmates gathered on the roof and hung banners protesting alleged abuse by guards in the prison. Several of the banners alleged that prison guards had killed the prisoners, beating one of them to death. While we don't know the truth, this prison sure looks like torture itself. Guantanamo Bay. Most people have argued that criminals deserve to be tortured, but in the case of inmates of Guantanamo Bay, most of them may not deserve it. Originally, this prison was intended to be an island outside the law, where terrorism suspects could be detained without process and interrogated without restraint. However, this prison eventually became home to so many detainees who have not been tried in court. Since the prison opened in 2002, it has become a symbol of injustice, abuse, and disregard for the rule of law. Almost 800 men have passed through the cells of Guantanamo Bay, and in addition to unlawful detention, many were subjected to torture and other brutal treatment. There are not many held in the prison today, but almost all of them are held without charge or trial. Dozens of these detainees have already been cleared for release by the US military and national security agencies, but still, they have not been let go. Torture was central to Guantanamo's founding and still infects its every function. Some officials have even referred to the prison as a battle lab, and the label proved accurate. This is because experiments with torture at Guantanamo are widely known. These experiments include the infamous sleep deprivation program, where inmates are moved from one cell to another for hours just to make sure they don't sleep a wink for several days. A media agency known as Free once went to the prison for documentary after the news of torture at this detention facility became widespread. On getting there, they were shown cells that contradict reports of inhumane environments and areas that are not as bad as reported by ex-inmates. They were also taken to a shaded area where they were instructed not to talk, but to whisper. This area shows a different level of detention and poor conditions.
Then the officers take us to another part of the prison. Everything is shaded. We can only whisper.
Many of the men at Guantanamo are torture survivors, and all of them have been exposed to the physical and psychological trauma associated with prolonged, indefinite detention. Many are suffering the effects of these abuses as they are rapidly aging and constantly falling sick with health problems that the military is not able to address at the prison. The documentary team reported that they were not allowed to leave the premises with some files, which were retrieved and deleted right there. But the few that they were able to go back with were shown to an ex-inmate who expressed his shock.
I saw these pictures too after my release and wondered, wow, we had so much there and I didn't know anything about it. I was there for 5 years and I didn't see any of it.
Unlike Guantanamo Bay, La Sabaneta prison is run by inmates, which creates situations I'm sure you can imagine. La Sabaneta prison. This prison is ranked one of the most violent prisons in the world, and for that, there were calls for it to be closed down and turned into a museum. Known officially as the Maracaibo National Prison, it was operated by the Ministry of Prison Systems in Venezuela from 1958 until it was closed in 2013, following a deadly incident. Sabaneta was severely overcrowded, and at the time of closure, it was home to 3,700 inmates, despite being built to occupy just 700 prisoners.
There are no lights in the darkened accommodation areas. The prisoners hang out in the corridors, and we're told it's a no-go area for us. The prisoners won't allow it. We have 30 minutes and no question.
Surprisingly, almost 200 occupants were children of the inmates who were born and raised there. Like many Venezuelan prisons, gangs of inmates ran the facility, although there was one particular inmate who acted as the designated leader. This inmate forcefully took $1 from every inmate weekly and also walked around the prison with weapons in his shorts. No one, including the guards, could stand up to him and his underlings.
Inside, they have weapons, alcohol, drugs, and women. This is a prison out of control.
For the gang activities, Sabaneta was plagued by riots, including a particularly deadly incident on January 3rd, 1994. A group of inmates who are suspected to be gang members started a fire and shot or stabbed people who tried to escape the blaze. According to reports, over 150 people were killed as security guards attempted to regain control of the facility. An inmate who survived the incident said prisoners were armed with firearms, Molotov cocktails, and knives. The 1994 riot is cited as one of the deadliest prison incidents to date and drew international attention to the poor conditions of Venezuelan prisons. That's not all. Another riot occurred in 2013, claiming the lives of 16 inmates, with some being dismembered and beheaded. 15 inmates died in fights between rival gangs, with the other victim being killed in a separate incident. The government, however, blamed corrupt guards for smuggling in weapons to aid the violence, while the prison minister said that the incident was a result of an internal war within the prison. Eventually, this riot led to the closure of the prison, and also led to the calls for the prison to be turned into a museum so people could visit and learn about the historical running of corrupt prison systems. That sounds like a good idea to everyone except the gang leader, who put up a fight and refused to leave his kingdom within La Sabaneta upon its closure. Now, it is uncertain what's going on in this prison. There's a rumor that the prison is currently being converted into a museum, while back in August 2023, the Venezuelan Prison Observatory reported that residents feared the Sabaneta prison had been reopened. While La Sabaneta prison was shut down, El Salvador Mega Prison was recently opened in Tecoluca. El Salvador Mega Prison, officially known as the Center for the Confinement of Terrorism, or CICOT for short, this prison was specially built for gang members and opened in January 2023. You see, El Salvador is a small country, but as small as it is, its people live in fear of gang members ruling and terrorizing every street in the country. Although there are many gangs in Central America, the most notorious are Barrio 18 and MS-13. These two gangs shattered the relative peace in El Salvador when members of these gangs racked up 46 murders during a 3-day killing spree in November 2021. This was followed up by the indiscriminate massacre of 92 people, including shoppers, traders, and bus passengers in March 2022. Since then, the government made a plan to rid the country of them. And now, it seems that reign has come to an end, as President Nayib Bukele ordered a massive crackdown that has seen the arrests of over 70,000 individuals related to criminal gangs in the country. When the president unveiled this prison, he tweeted, "El Salvador has managed to go from being the world's most dangerous country to the safest country in the Americas. How did we do it? By putting criminals in jail. Is there space? There is now." I bet he didn't imagine the number of people that would be arrested, because the prison itself was built to hold only 40,000 inmates. However, now the number is close to double the prison's capacity. Each cell holds 65 to 70 prisoners, with steel walkways atop the cells, so heavily armed masked guards can watch them from above. It seems this prison will join the list of the inescapable because, according to the guards, the prisoners are watched all day. For the inmates, security and numbers aren't the only issues. The prison has dining halls, break rooms, a gym, and board games, but they are not for inmates, unlike most prisons that you know. And the craziest part is, once inmates enter this facility, they are never going to be released, as confirmed by the Justice Minister. A series of images released shows a glimpse into the conditions within this prison. The shirtless and completely tattooed gang members can be seen in cramped cells, and these cells are lit daily by harsh artificial lights to create an atmosphere of constant fear and potential violence. The gang members have their heads shaved and their hands bound behind their backs. When they walk, their backs are bent and their legs are chained. They are not allowed to receive visits, and there are no programs preparing them for reintegration into society after their sentences. No workshops or educational programs except for occasional motivational talks from prisoners who have gained a level of trust from prison officials. Prisoners sit in rows in the corridor outside their cells for the talks, or are led through exercise regimens under the supervision of guards. They are never allowed outside. While the inhabitants of the country are pleased with the government's approach, human rights organizations have criticized the prison's operations. But still, the president wouldn't budge because of the havoc they have wreaked in the past. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.